What's so special about this AT-RT, I ask. Nothing, your blank stares reply. Wrong, I tell you. Well, get on with it and tell us then, you demand. I will. This is the first ever LEGO Star Wars AT-RT released. It came out in 2005, and it is so very the first AT-RT that it wasn't even called AT-RT. The set's name was Clone Scout Walker. Looking at it today, it's nothing all that special, but you can see how it laid the groundwork for just about every AT-RT that came after, from general shaping to some parts that are still used on new models 20 years later. Which raises the question, why are there so many LEGO AT-RTs? It's to the prequels what Luke's Landspeeder is to the originals, and what nothing is to the sequels, because that trilogy doesn't get any sets. So let's trace the history of LEGO Star Wars AT-RTs, discussing the many oversized ones, highlighting some of the underappreciated smaller ones, and trying to figure out why there are so many of them running around your collection. Clone Scout Walker was released in 2005 with a retail price of $10 with 108 pieces and one minifigure. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $16 today, making this set a pretty good deal even by 2026 standards. You can see all the hallmarks of future AT-RTs in this 2005 model, from the legs ratcheting at 3 different points, to the general shaping of everything, to the absolute blatant disregard of scale. You see, AT-RTs are supposed to be just a bit taller than their clone trooper companions, which this one is not. There's also the legs are supposed to go on either side thing, but since it's physically impossible for a minifigure to do that, it gets a pass here. But ignoring that quirky minifigure quirk doesn't account for why the Clone Scout Walker is so unapologetically huge. Reasons for that, while never officially given, are likely down to 2 factors: feasibility and playability. No one's going to pay $10 for an AT-RT that's closer to minifigure scale on its own, and even if they would, playing with something so small isn't going to feel the same as playing with something that's bigger. And thus the LEGO AT-RT scale was inarguably defined by this humble 2005 set, spurring on 2 decades of oversized all-terrain recon transport addiction for LEGO Star Wars. Except it wasn't. And it didn't. The next AT-RT wouldn't appear until 2009, and it only did so as a tiny little polybag. Interestingly, despite being much closer to an accurate size, it's still not named AT-RT, instead going by Clone Walker. Probably because it doesn't actually look that great. This also really isn't the proper build, because I don't actually own the set, nor do I have all the proper pieces, but I wanted to give you a better sense of scale than just showing the pictures. It gets the job done, and is closer to minifigure scale, actually being a bit too short this time. But its proportions are wonky beyond belief, and that means it isn't a major chapter in the AT-RT story, though mostly because it would be utterly outdone just a year later. The 2010 Clone Turbo Tank marked the first time that the AT-RT appeared close to minifigure scale, and also the first time that it appeared as a side build in a larger set, and I hate that I don't own it. In fact, it was so good that this was the model used in LEGO Star Wars 3: The Clone Wars, and with stardom like that, it's safe to say that this little 2010 model inarguably set the scale for LEGO AT-RTs, and spurred on a decade and a half of AT-RT addiction for LEGO Star Wars. Except it wasn't. And it really didn't. 3 years later, LEGO Star Wars went back to monstrously sized AT-RTs with a set finally named AT-RT. There was also this Swamp AT-RT in the 2010 Brickmaster book that didn't fit the joke I just reused. But it's important to note this one because by 2013, small AT-RTs were actually winning by a margin of 3-2, and it's not a bad little model, just a little niche. 2013 was the first time in 8 years that an AT-RT was released in Wumbo size, and this one is remarkably similar to the Clone Scout Walker. It's clearly newer, but clearly following the same style. What's fascinating about this set is that there was no real precedent for giant AT-RTs when it came out. There was the 2005 one, yes, but the previous 3 models had all been much, much smaller. So the fact that this one is actually bigger than 2005 is really surprising. It leaves the 2013 set feeling like a little bit of a test drive for what was to come. Finally, inarguably setting the it actually did set the scale, and it actually did kickstart the addiction, but there's 2 more tiny things first. First, in 2015, the Geonosis Troopers Battle Pack had this wonky AT-RT that I've never really liked because of the 6-shooter. It's also not that tiny, nor is it that huge. It's also a 2-seater, so take this one as you will. The 2016 Clone Turbo Tank included a smaller AT-RT as a side build, and while it's not as nostalgic for most people as the 2010 version, it's a solid little walker and brings the tally to 4-2 in favor of small AT-RTs. Or 5-2, or 4-3, depending on how you feel about Geonosis Troopers, but since it's a little skimpier than the big ones, but also a lot bigger than the small ones, and it's also a 2-seater, I tend to not really count it at all. This is also why I didn't mention the one from the 2009 Clone Troopers Battle Pack, since it's not really an AT-RT at all. And notably, the 2016 version is remarkably close to minifigure scale. It's not perfect, but it's there. And it's also the last time LEGO Star Wars has attempted to make an AT-RT at this size. For the 20th anniversary of LEGO Star Wars in 2019, the theme released an updated version of the Clone Scout Walker, bringing our total to 4 to 3, still in favor of the smaller ones. This basically put a 2005 coat of paint on the 2013 model, and it feels like an acknowledgement of the AT-RT's oversized presence in those earlier days of LEGO Star Wars, while foreshadowing an even more oversized presence that it was about to have. Just a year later in 2020, another oversized AT-RT came out in the 501st Battle Pack, meaning that we had 2 oversized AT-RTs on shelves at the same time for the first time. This one actually made some pretty noticeable improvements to the design, mainly in the stability of the handlebars and the antennas in the back here, and it also was a real visual shakeup for the AT-RT for pretty much the first time, and it looks pretty good too. And what vocal oversized AT-RT haters won't be quick to admit is that it's actually noticeably smaller than the 2019 model, losing a lot of the bulk in the upper half. It's still huge, just not absurdly so. If you're keeping track, that means our ATR totals are now tied at 4 to 4. But as the race heated up, AT-RTs cooled off. There wouldn't be another one until 2025's 327th Clone Troopers Battle Pack. There's a lot to say about this set in terms of price and value, but in terms of AT-RT, it's really good. Believe it or not, it actually shrunk again compared to the 2020 version while keeping that visual style, and improving on it. Brick build detail is always better than stickers, and that new stud shooter looks a lot better. So our tally is now 5 to 4 in favor of the big guys, but what's interesting is that as the larger models have taken over, they've actually gotten smaller. 2020 was a step down from the previous models, and 2025 is closer in size to whatever the Geonosis one is than it is to even 2020, let alone 2013. So is the oversized AT-RT hate warranted, and what does it mean for the future of LEGO Star Wars? I still don't think we'll see a properly scaled, standalone AT-RT anytime soon, and with no side build AT-RT since 2016, the odds of going smaller than the 327th Battle Pack are slim. Though tracing the history of the LEGO AT-RT, it's fascinating to see that for something so maligned for being so out of scale, that there's actually a fair number of more accurately sized models. If you made me make a prediction that'll get me laughed at when this video gets randomly recommended in 8 years, I'd say that the scale of the 327th AT-RT is probably what we can expect moving forward. Hey, editing me here, and in the embarrassingly long amount of time that it's taken me between recording this video and editing this video, the Mando and Grogu AT-RT set got revealed, and that one looks to pretty much be the same size as the 327th one, so basically I can predict the future. It's still oversized, but less so than previous giant ones, and with dreams of a perfectly scaled AT-RT buried in a heap of Brickmaster books, I think that AT-RTs still have a bright future, because if you ask me, the 327th one is one of the best. Which scale of AT-RT do you prefer? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look back at LEGO Star Wars AT-RTs, a like is very much appreciated. And be sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss any of my meandering ramblings, or any of the latest LEGO news, which I guess is something too. Thanks for watching.